I don't want to give away any spoilers. The very first time we met, we had a 3-hour meeting. And by the end of that meeting, I just knew she was Lily. We had, honestly, there were many instances on set where I just let the women figure it out, and I took a step back and kind of jumped in more as an actor in those scenes than even as a director. You know, Blake choreographing and working with them and everybody. It was some of the most fulfilling moments on set was just watching them figure this out.
Judge Lewis Lyman's recent actions suggest that things aren't going as smoothly for Blake Lively as before. Earlier, many believed the court was favoring her during the discovery process, but recent rulings tell a different story. The judge has started to give more credibility to the claims made by Jen Abel, who says she's actually the victim in this case, not Blake Lively or Stephanie Jones. Jen Abel argues that the real issue comes from private messages taken from her phone without permission. She filed a third-party complaint to bring Stephanie Jones into the same lawsuit as Blake. In her filing, Abel explained that she was an employee of Jones' Works at the time of the events Blake described. She was simply doing her job as a public relations worker, helping clients manage good and bad publicity. According to her, everything she did was under Jones' Works' direction because they were her employer. Abel says the only reason she's involved in this case is because her employer worked with Blake Lively and used private data from her phone in an illegal way. Abel also claims that Jones' Works avoided being sued directly because of this secret cooperation. Her complaint even states that she was only named as a plaintiff because she followed the orders of Jones' Works. She didn't own her own PR company then, she was paid by Jones' Works the entire time. Abel believes that Jones and her company conspired with Blake to misuse her personal data, which they allegedly stole and intercepted illegally to harm their former clients at Wayfair and related people like Heath and Baldoni. The judge did not accept any of Jones's arguments to dismiss these claims. Her lawyers had called Abel's claims frivolous, expecting them to be thrown out quickly, but that didn't happen. Instead, the judge allowed two major claims to continue. The key issue is the stolen data, how it moved from Jones to Blake and became evidence in this case. That data remains a major focus, and the judge doesn't appear to believe that Blake is simply the victim anymore. Now, Abel's complaint lists 3 legal claims against Jones' Works. The first is about statutory indemnification, under California Labor Law Section 2802. This law says an employer must cover the costs of an employee's legal defense if the actions were part of their job. The judge didn't fully rule on it yet, but said there's enough reason to believe Abel might qualify for it. This means if California law applies, Jones' Works may have to pay Abel's legal costs whether she wins or loses. The judge noted that Abel worked for Jones' Works, followed their instructions, and performed PR tasks for clients like Wayfair and Baldoni. Since Jones' Works benefited financially from her work, Abel argues that they should take full responsibility. The judge wrote that this situation fits the classic case of implied indemnity, where the employer must bear the blame and financial loss for what their employee did under orders. In simple terms, Abel says she was doing her job and following directions, and now she's being blamed for it. The judge hasn't decided everything yet, but his tone and recent rulings show that the court is no longer treating Blake Lively's side as the clear victim, and that Jen Abel's arguments are being taken very seriously. Jen Abel argues that the accusations against her are simply about her doing her normal job as a public relations professional. She explains that her role was to help clients like Wayfair and Baldoni manage their public image, to get positive media coverage, and reduce bad press. That's the core responsibility of anyone in PR. Abel insists that she was sued only because she was fulfilling her duties as an employee of Jones' Works, acting under their supervision, and not on her own. She makes it clear that everything she did was part of her job, and under direct instruction from her employer. Nothing she did was personal, nor was it something that Jones' Works couldn't have predicted. The judge agreed that this interpretation makes sense, noting that Abel's connection to Jones' Works, its PR business, and its clients supports her claim. However, despite this, Stephanie Jones herself and Jones Works were not named as defendants in the lawsuit, only Abel was. Stephanie Jones's lawyers tried to argue that Abel wasn't following company orders at all, but instead acting against Jones Works' wishes. They claimed that Abel went rogue, defied her boss, and even tried to harm Jones Works from within. They painted her as a disloyal employee acting with malicious intent. The judge, however, didn't buy that version of the story. He found Abel's explanation more convincing, that she was simply carrying out her job, as instructed. The judge's response suggests that he sees the heart of the problem differently. It's becoming clearer to him that Wayfair's argument might be correct. The true wrongdoing didn't start with Abel or even with Blake Lively, but with Stephanie Jones herself. Jones allegedly took private data from Abel's work phone, data she wasn't legally entitled to access under California law. While she was allowed to physically take the phone, she wasn't allowed to search through it or extract personal information. Instead of wiping it clean or restoring it, she reportedly went through it, copying and using private material. The judge indicated that if that happened, Jones could be held legally responsible for it. He also pointed out that Abel's actions don't seem malicious. Despite whatever screenshots or evidence Jones's team provided, the judge sees no clear sign that Abel acted out of bad intent. Another major point in Abel's favor is that one of the key events in the conflict, the public drama that ignited the entire lawsuit, appears to have been caused by Stephanie Jones herself. After a peace agreement was reached between the parties, Jones allegedly went against instructions and shared information with the Daily Mail, creating the media storm that continues to impact everyone involved. The judge emphasized that if both Abel and Jones Works contributed to the same harm, then both could share responsibility for the damages. This means that if Blake wins her case, Jones Works might have to pay a share of the judgment since Abel was acting under their authority. Additionally, if California's labor law, Section 2802, is applied, Jones Works could even be forced to cover Abel's entire legal costs. In short, Abel now has three potential legal protections working in her favor: indemnity under California law, common law indemnity under New York law, and contribution. All three remain valid options, which gives her a strong defense. The bigger picture is that this situation isn't looking good for Blake Lively's side. The court is starting to see that Jones Works, not Abel or Wayfair, might have been the real source of the problem. If Abel can prove that she was just following her employer's directions, Jones Works could end up responsible for much of the fallout from this entire case. This new development seriously weakens Blake Lively's claim that she's the innocent victim in all of this. Her entire argument has been that Jen Abel and others acted out of revenge, trying to hurt her with bad intentions. But the judge has now made it clear that based on what Abel presented, there's no sign of personal malice. Abel wasn't trying to attack Blake, she was just doing her job as a public relations professional. Her work was about protecting her client's image, reducing negative press, and promoting positive coverage. That's what PR people are hired to do. Because of this, the judge seems to be leaning toward the idea that Abel was simply carrying out her professional responsibilities and didn't act out of spite. This changes the entire tone of the case. Now that Jones Works, Abel's employer, is involved as part of the case, it opens up a whole new line of questioning. If the lawsuit goes to trial, the jury will hear about Jones Works and might wonder why that company isn't being sued directly. They'll likely start to question why Blake is focusing on Abel, but not on the company that employed her. If the jury begins to suspect that Jones Works may have played a bigger role in the controversy, and that Blake deliberately chose not to include them as defendants, it could seriously damage Blake's credibility. Abel's claims that Jones Works and Blake collaborated to use her private data illegally start to look more believable. It could make it seem like Blake wasn't just a victim, but possibly someone involved in wrongdoing herself. The judge's recent rulings suggest he's been paying close attention to the entire timeline, including related cases like the Van Zon data dispute. He seems to be recognizing patterns, and giving weight to Abel's side of the story. That means the court may see this as a much more tangled situation than Blake originally portrayed. Instead of one simple narrative where Blake was wronged, the judge appears to think it's possible that both Blake and Stephanie Jones caused harm as well. This situation is also dangerous for Jones' works. If it's proven that the company took private data from Abel's phone and shared it with Blake, that's a major violation of privacy laws. Jones' works could face serious legal penalties for that. And if it turns out they had some sort of deal with Blake, like promising to share information in exchange for avoiding a lawsuit, things could spiral even further. If Jones' works ends up being held legally responsible, they might have to pay damages, reimburse legal fees, or face separate charges. That kind of pressure could push them to settle quickly before trial. And if they move to settle, that puts pressure on Blake too. If the evidence used in her case came from stolen data, it could be thrown out, leaving her entire case weakened or invalid. In short, this is a major setback for Blake. The judge's comments make her look less like a victim, and more like someone entangled in a web of questionable behavior. The allegations that stolen information was exploited will now move forward to trial, and that's a serious blow to her defense. The longer this plays out, the more it seems that Jones' works and Blake may both be facing very real consequences for how this case began and how it's unfolded. Leave a comment below, give this video a thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss an update.